Okay, let's see now the structure of the most important organ in the cardiovascular system, which is the heart. The heart is surrounded by a fibrous sac called pericardium, which is protecting and anchoring the heart. The pericardium or the heart wall itself is made out of three layers. The epicardium, this outer layer, this is very thin layer of epithelial and connective tissue. Then the myocardium, this is the second layer, which is as suggest from the name myo. This is the um, heart muscles or the cardiac muscles. They are controlled by electrical signals flow directly from cell to cell within the this layer, and when this layer contracts, the heart is beating. Then there is the endocardium. This is the third layer, which is endothelial tissue, and this layer is continuous with the blood vessels. So these are the heart wall, three layers. Okay, let's see now the inner structures of the heart. I will clear all of this. Now for the heart, we have four chambers. One, two, these are called the atria. The atria, right atrium and left atrium, both are called atria. These are the upper chambers, 1 and 2. Then we have the lower chambers, 3 and 4. These are the ventricles. We have the right ventricle and the left ventricle. So 4 chambers, 2 atria, 2 ventricles, separated, especially the ventricles, separated by a septum. This is the septum. This is muscular partition separating right and left side of the heart. Now this is continuous here, although it's not so clear. So if we said septum, we're mainly referring to the ventricular septum that's separating the ventricles. Now, the chambers or the blood flow between these chambers is controlled through valves. And we have 2 sets of valves. Each set has 2 sub-valves. Now, the first valve or the first 2 sets are something called atrioventricular valves. Atrioventricular valve. Because these are separating the atrium from the ventricle. Separating the atrium from the ventricle. So we have the right atrioventricular valve, which is this one, and we have the left atrioventricular valve, which is this. The right separating the right atrium from the right ventricle, and the left separating the left atrium from the left ventricle. Now, these, we have another names for them. The right ventricle valve is called the tricuspid valve. Tricuspid because it's made out of 3 valves or 3 flaps. Okay, 1, 2, 3. 3 flaps. Whereas the left one is the bicuspid because it's just made out of 2 flaps, 1, 2. So the right one is the tricuspid, the second one or the left one is the bicuspid. So this is the first set, the atrioventricular valves. The second set is something called semilunar valves. This is 1 and this is 2. The pulmonary semilunar valves. Semilunar because they are like half moon, as you can see. Half moon. Semilunar valve. The first one is the pulmonary semilunar valve, separates the right ventricle from pulmonary artery or pulmonary trunk or artery. This is one. And the second one is here. It's called the aortic semilunar valve. The aortic semilunar valve. This is it. Separates the left ventricle from aorta. Okay, separates the left ventricle from the aorta. So this is like a very brief inner explanation, or a very brief explanation of the inner parts of the heart. This is written, and this is animation that would explain it. Now, let's try to understand now how blood is flowing through the cardiovascular system. And to understand this, we need to understand that there are two circuits, two circulations of the blood associated with the heart. The first one is called pulmonary circuit. This is between lungs and heart, and through which the blood picks oxygen and gets rid of CO2. And then the systemic circuit, which is between the heart and rest of the body, in which oxygen is delivered to the rest of the cells, and CO2 is picked up from the cells. Should not be a 3 here. Now, as we said, for the pulmonary circuit, this is between the heart and the lungs. Blood gets oxygen and dump CO2. This is the pulmonary circuit. Then we have the systemic circuit, which is between the heart and the rest of the body. Systemic circuit. As we said, heart and rest of the body, where our tissues are getting oxygen delivered to the tissue, and they are dumping CO2, which will be taken back to the heart and from there to the lungs to be exchanged with oxygen, and of course CO2 would leave the body. Okay, let's see now how the blood, now this is the overall view of both circuits, but let's get into the details of them. I will clear everything and I will use these numbers. I will follow the numbers here. Okay? Now, in number 1, which is here, blood is coming back from all the body, and that is deoxygenated blood, meaning that is filled with CO2. And it will come back from the upper part of the body or the lower part of the body through something called Vena Cava. Vena Cava. These are big veins that are pouring the blood into the heart. Where exactly into the heart? Into here, into right atrium. And that is number 2, the right atrium. From the right atrium, the blood would pass through the tricuspid valve, or what we called it, the atrioventricular valve, okay, that is number 3, into the right ventricle, which is here, into the right ventricle. Now from 3 to 4, From there, the blood would move through semilunar valve, or technically through pulmonary semilunar valve, which is this one, okay, to the pulmonary trunk, which is this one. Pulmonary trunk will take blood to lungs. That is number 5 on both sides. In lungs, the blood is oxygenated, where blood is oxygenated, meaning that CO2 is giving up and oxygen is reabsorbed. That is happening in lungs. That is number 6. I forgot to mention that these blood vessels, number 5, they are called the pulmonary arteries. They are taking the deoxygenated blood toward the lungs. Now, after that, once the blood is oxygenated, it will come back through number 7. Blood comes back through 7, which are pulmonary veins. Pulmonary veins toward the heart. And that will end the pulmonary circuit. Okay, I need you now to pause the video and go over this first portion of the pulmonary circuit. When you come back, you would follow me in explaining the systemic circuit. So please pause the video and think, of course, about what we see. Now, if you are back, we will go now through the systemic circuit. We ended up that the blood is coming back through the pulmonary veins from the lungs, and that is oxygenated blood now. It goes into number 8, which is the left atrium. Into the left atrium. From the left atrium, it will go to the left ventricle through the bicuspid valve, or the AV valve, which is this one, to the left ventricle, which is number 9, and from the left ventricle it will go to, from the left ventricle it will go to, or to the aorta through the aortic semilunar valve, which is, we cannot see it here, but it's somewhere in this area. Okay, to the aorta, which is number 10. And from there, from the aorta, from number 10, it will be distributed or delivered to other arteries, which will carry the blood. These are, we're talking about number 11 here, number 12, which will carry the blood to the rest of the body, to the cells. So cells will pick up oxygen, will dump their CO2, and again we would start collecting that deoxygenated blood now through the vena cava and repeat the cycle again. So this would mark the end of the systemic circle. And technically it's not the end because it's continuous, it's a circuit. So it is continuous, the blood keeps running all through these systems or through these blood vessels at all time. Okay? So all of this, what I have been explaining, I'm tempted to go through this before stopping the video because this is usually, it's easy. Just 2 slides. Now, we want to talk about the coronary arteries, how the blood, how the heart itself is getting the blood for its needs. So we are talking about this image. The blood gets its oxygen supplies through coronary arteries, and see, for example, we have the right coronary artery, we have the left coronary artery. These are supplying the blood walls or the blood cells and the blood cells with oxygen, and they are getting smaller and smaller. So these are the coronary arteries. And then the other way around, we have the coronary veins in blue. They are collecting this deoxygenated blood from the myocardial capillaries and the channel it back to the right atrium. So this is like the cardiac circuit, which is very small circuit, and it is about how the blood, how the heart itself is getting its blood, its oxygen, and its nutrients through the coronary arteries, which are delivering oxygenated blood, and through the cardiac veins, which are collecting that deoxygenated blood. So I will stop here. This image shows the major blood vessels around the body. We talked about the aorta, we talked about the vena cava. There are common iliac vein, common iliac artery, femoral vein, femoral artery, great venous vein, subclavian arteries and veins, superior vena cava, jugular vein, cardiac artery. So these are the biggest, the major arteries and veins in a human body. So I will stop here. When we come back, we will talk about some physiological concepts of the cardiac cycle. Please post your comments, videos, notes, questions into the forum, and come back later to see this video.